I can be a little bit stubborn, and I'm smiling because I think it's a little funny when my spirit team pushes me into these certain levels of growth and stretching and authenticity, and calls me right to the table. I get some humor out of it. It's a good joke. It's funny. Yeah. So you got me. I say that because I feel I'm being called into some vulnerability and authenticity, and I can actively feel my human parts wanting from survival skill and learned patterns of relational dynamics, wanting to rise into that place of the ego taking the lead. And what I mean by that, we're going to get into talking about the difference between a boundary, a wall, and expectations or rules. And so when I mention the stubbornness and the vulnerability, let's dive into it because ultimately I allow myself to be led from the place of intuition, spirit, that higher path, which very often does create tension with learned programming places inside of me, which I think is very common. I imagine many other people on this journey will resonate with that experience. When I feel sad, um, I can get into a place of judging that experience, like many of us do, I believe. And one of the things that sounded like for me when I was feeling a little pocket of sadness over this past week was this: I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. I love this life I have right now. I love it. I love what I do for work. I love my family life. I love it. Like spirit is closer to me than ever before. And I'm getting a correction. I'm closer to spirit than I've been ever before. And and I love that. I love the magic that creates in my life. I've been seeing rainbows just constantly. And when I see it, it's just like whoop, this energy just through my whole being. It's love energy. I just feel loved, right? And so I was thinking this: why am I sad? I shouldn't be sad. I'm so blessed and I love my life and I'm so divinely supported. And then I was hearing this in return: you can be sad and supported? Question mark, exclamation mark. And then I was like, oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Um, yeah. And this is, I believe, part of ascension work, an embodiment of that enlightenment zone, right? Ascension means you stay human. Don't ascend so far that you just like up and left your body, right? We're meant to be human, and a big, huge part of the human experience is fluidity of emotion, emotion, energy in motion. It is meant to flow and move. And the moment we create or attach to any sort of self judgment or judgment on the experience of the emotion itself, that creates resistance energy. And so we've slowed the flow of the emotion, that energy in motion, we've slowed it, which is not really what I want to do when I have a feeling of sadness. I don't want to go like, hey, let's push this, condense it, and then accidentally stretch it out so that I'm stuck in this pocket of sadness much longer than I need to be. by pulling away from myself and creating or demonstrating patterning of judgment, isolation, self rejection, whatever the things are that perpetuate some patterning of an insecure attachment style learned from childhood or trauma histories or whatever it is, any relational dynamic that occurs over the course of your developmental years. Um, that becomes your learned human programming. When I'm upset, I retreat. And sorry, I like realized when I put my hand on it, I shook that whole table. It's that stubborn energy. I can feel it coming out. I had a conversation about this with a client this week, and I said, yes, you're right. There's a big difference between a wall versus a boundary. And when we talk about relational dynamics and the the rules that exist in or expectations in between two people, right? That's the language I use for that. Those are expectations that are communicated ideally openly. Here's what I expect. Here's how I'd like to be treated. A rule, expectation, request. Those are not the same thing as a boundary or a wall. And a boundary is these are rules for how I treat myself, how I function in relationships with other people. So I might have boundaries in my relationships with other people, but those aren't things I give away and put in the other person's hands. Those are things I maintain. I maintain for myself. I may have different boundaries with different people in relationships, but they center around how I treat myself. The power in it stays in my hands. And that's different from a request. It's also different from a wall. A wall is icing someone out. And that's really not a healthy place. That's survival skill type of energy that is coming from a wounded place, a learned helplessness place. Because the thing about walls like that is they're a bit unmovable, and no matter how much light and love the other person on the other side of that wall is radiating toward that wall, the way in which it can come down is from it melting from the interior. The melt has to happen from the inside out. Yes. It's not your job to lower other people's walls. We can reflect and mirror, and there's growth work for us. That's my work. When I notice that wall, ooh, Miranda, look at this. Girl, you still have some tendencies to want to just perpetuate these limiting beliefs that are not serving you and are not true. They're not true. They're illusions of separation when you go, I'm alone. and and yes, when you've done a level of healing that pulls you into a place of union within, the fractures of trauma or the wounded energy is, dissolved by that healing energy. As you come into a place of internal sense of wholeness and worthiness and just reclamation, shedding off of the limited beliefs and the patterning out of skills we learned that once were adaptive for the situations that we were dealing with when we were young, but now can be maladaptive. That level of healing is what melts down those walls that we've put up, because you need to arrive at this inner sense of wholeness and self love safety, and grounded energy within in order to feel that we can melt those walls down so that we can function in relational dynamics with a place of secure attachment in our relationship to self. This allows us to know I can speak with authenticity, truth, respectful assertiveness to other people regarding clarity of communication surrounding my requests, my preferences, my expectations. Was it what it means to me and what it looks like to be well loved? What it feels like, looks like, how people feel well loved does have uniqueness to it. And that's something I want to stress too, because I think there's too often a lot of assumptions and feeding of some very limited human beliefs around that if they loved me, they would blank, blank, blank type of thing. And it's like, no, that's like just communicate. And I saw somebody mention this, and so it's not my original idea, but I can't remember who said it. But I at least feel better about not claiming it for as my original idea. That was something along the lines of seeing all these patterns on social media of these, if they this, then they don't this, or if they this, then this, and it's just like a codex to interpret what it means or what it doesn't mean in world of romantic relationships. And why does that codex need to exist? Because it walls you up. We don't need that. We don't need that. But it's like people are coming up with all this variety of conflicting if they this then they don't this. So just move on. And those are just walls because really open communication is what should be happening there. Express what you're feeling, ask for clarity, have conversations around what does it look like for you to be well loved? How is this pace feeling for you? Etc. That's where it's at. Everyone is unique. Everyone is at different journeys of healing. Everyone has different trauma histories and wounded energy. What feels safe and healthy and looks like me being cared for, considered, and well loved is going to be unique to each person, right? So we melt those walls down when we heal from the inside out. We return home to ourselves. We've done that healing trauma work. The wall isn't always, really, maybe rarely, at a certain point in time, you realize the wall is about your inner healing that needs to be done. The rules and expectations are in between the dynamics with the other person, and the boundaries are yours. And so those walls melt when I feel so held by myself, so whole inside, so deeply rooted, safe, and, in more of a divine union place inside than I've been in the past. So now I feel I have a greater level of capacity to function in authenticity in relationships, to speak truth with love, integrity, respect, all the things without any fear based things getting in the way of my ability to do that. And I trust myself with the boundary piece because the boundaries are mine. The boundaries isn't the other person's. When it stays with me, I hold the power to it, right? In this dynamic, I will do this only when I am noticing this. It's what I will do or what I will not do. It's the rules I set of how I function with myself. Inside of my relationship between me and me, that's boundaries. Inside of my relationship between me and somebody else, those are rules and expectations and requests. And the information that unfolds or the experiences that occur in regard to those spoken expectations, rules, requests, then informs the boundaries and my capacity to uphold those for myself, to maintain that deeply grounded, rooted sense of wholeness here, the sacred fortress energy.